All right, guys, we're back again. Going to discuss a new topic, something we found pretty interesting. So we want to talk about supervisors in the workplace, because that's something that is, I don't actually think it gets enough credit as a conversation in general, but two, it is something that I feel like we have something to say on, considering we both have experience in being supervisors and also having supervisors that are either really good, has made an impact on ourselves and how we grew within that work and that career. And then we have really shitty ones, for lack of a better word.
And I've seen like memes about the, those like bits of information on social media and stuff where, it'll impart like a story, right? And in one of these I'd seen, supervisors is what causes people to leave or stay in a company, and this is and ultimately that can lead to failure or success in a company. So I completely subscribe to that. If your supervisor is really bad, it's going to run off any good employees. So I've had bad supervisors and I've had really good supervisors, and we're going to go into what makes each of what it is. John Quest has way more supervisor experience than I have, but I have I would say total probably like half a year's worth of supervision experience or close to that. It was kind of like on and off at certain points because my work history's been a little funny. I had to go into the reserves and then I had to leave for training, and I was interim supervisor before that, and I came back and then I worked as regular security guard, and then eventually I became a security supervisor, and then I left and went to another job. So, but I do have experience like managing people, like a small crew of like, I would say like 8 people. So
yeah, for sure. So I guess the first thing we want to talk about is what a bad supervisor looks like, which is, and most people have a pretty good experience of what that is.
Yeah, everybody. Right?
But there's ways to kind of see this early when you're in a work environment. There are certain things that denotes the ability to be a leader. It's not just something that happens after the experience. It is something within that person's character that helps them become that. And usually our bad supervisors are lacking that particular thing, which is a lot of times that is their ability to connect with people. A lot of times you have supervisors that are taking it as a sense of power, and that is generally the biggest problem. That's the most common thing that everyone sees. You have somebody who thinks that it means something more than trying to just lead people and grow. It's for their own personal vanity. So.
Yeah, and then you have the supervisors also. I mean, all that's on point, but you have the supervisors that they want to look good on paper. They want to look good for the higher-ups, but then in their pursuit of looking good, they neglect their employees. So really, they're a bad supervisor. They just look good because they do all the little nitpicky things to look good on paper, but they really just suck. I mean, a lot of times, just there for themselves.
Yeah. A lot of times you catch them, they're like in my job, a lot of it involves numbers. It's distribution. So everything's numbers. It's money, it's product count, etc. And you have people that are very good at successfully making that look right. We have a document that's printed out, and it's like, okay, we are where we need to be for the month. But in that, they have slaved around the people that work underneath them to get there. So, and it's not, and some people look at it and like, well, that's what you have to do to get the job done. Like, yes, but I've seen the alternative where someone can connect to their employees and still do the same thing without running people off. Because see, the thing about a bad supervisor like that success is temporary. It always is temporary. Because then they run off the people that were powerful enough, good enough to actually do that for them and had the work ethic and skill. And they go away and they have to start from scratch again. And, well, now that becomes quite clear that person's major problem was connecting with people.
Right. Those supervisors that put themselves first, right? That they're just in it for their stats. They're in there to look good, to get the promotion, right? They don't give a fuck about the people that are under them, right? So a supervisor like that, it will run employees off. I know when I worked under a supervisor like that, I didn't want to do that supervisor any favors at all. Can you come in to cover this? No. I would come up with any excuse under the sun not to come in because I just don't want to. I have my own personal time that I want to use, and it's like all you care about is looking good. It's like that's the only reason. Like it's not really for any other one. Now I had a previous really good supervisor before that, And she really empathized, like she really connected with me. She's like, "Oh, I know it's rough," like because I used to work with a lot of security, right? And they do shift work, so you would have to come in. They would always have to be manned, so sometimes you'd have to get called in if there's nobody there. And this supervisor is like, "Look, I know I'm cutting into your personal time, like I really need you to be here." Like, but she made an effort to like connect with me emotionally and be like, "I get it. Like, this sucks. Like, just help me out, and I'm gonna help you out. Don't worry. I'll return the favor to you."
Yeah.
And so having that relationship, it's like, yes, I wanted to go above and beyond for that supervisor because it's like you won my respect. You care about me as a person. So now let me return the favor to you. Let me help you out because you're gonna help me out. You're gonna let me take vacation when I want to take vacation. You're gonna try to make things work, and you're gonna try to be fair. So with those people, like it's all about. It's just how you interact with people. Like you got to win people over if you're a supervisor. If you're a bad supervisor, that that immediately everybody hates them. That's the signature thing with the bad supervisor.
Yeah. The general sense of being understanding is like one of the biggest aspects. And even in that, sometimes you catch people who can forge that idea, but it's only enough to get you to do what you're going to do for them. Because you get those people that are like, "Hey, can you do this for me? I'm sorry. I get it. And then they never repay the favor. They just keep saying that. So
and that's a problem too.
Yeah.
Like, because then it's like, then you actually make the person feel even more bad because they feel like a fool because it's like, oh, well, this guy just keeps conning me and you don't fucking do anything.
It's like, I've been out putting all this effort for you, and then next thing you know, you're stuck in a position where it's like, well, I've been working, 50 hours. I'm like, oh, I wanted to get this day off. I'm like, oh, no, we need you to come in. And they're like, wait a minute. So, yeah, that's definitely one of the thing is that when you catch a lot of people that when there are bad supervisors like that, they'll still do things that look good, whether that's getting the numbers right or trying to connect with you in a certain way. But a lot of times it's temporary. And the same thing, like I said earlier, when it comes to like having the people to do what it is that gets the job done well, it goes away. And I know that because in my position, I had a supervisor that I basically kind of read the book by its cover at the beginning, which was kind of a foolish mistake. The person was just lacking experience in our company, thus didn't actually want to flex, any sort of managerial power on anyone. But once she gained that, then we saw her true colors. And we realized we're like, okay, this is not the kind of person who really lets anyone have leeway, doesn't want to actually be a team player. It's her way or the highway kind of thing. And though she can have those moments like, well, I can connect with you, but there was like, it was a snake in the grass, I'm going to take you out of lunch, discuss opportunities, etc. And then, turns around and doesn't do a lot of the things that were promised. And we constantly have team members, and those people cycled in and out consistently through the entirety of her management cycle because no one could stand to do it. Playing favoritism, doing things as simple as not giving raises based off of the manner in which the question was asked, even though if you had listened to it, you wouldn't have known. But that's the thing, there I was being at that job for a while, seeing other people that had served in that position that she was in, and there was that she was bad in disguise because she did a lot of the things that were necessary. She was nice to the business owners in the building. She was nice to the employees, and she bought food, tried to connect or whatever, but sometimes it's like a little kid and candy kind of thing. That happens too. That happens when you're out there working. So you have to keep your eyes open. That's one of the biggest things with it. You usually can see that stuff early. And, on the opposite end, if you have a good supervisor, that stuff stays consistent. It never goes away. And generally, a good supervisor is going to know about you on a personal level a lot when that happens. And even if they don't get to that particular point, like he was saying, they're still going to reciprocate the favors consistently, even if they don't get to know you in that way. Because sometimes a job's atmosphere is that level professional where that is not a thing that is open a lot, or maybe that person's not like that, but they definitely have your back.
Right.
So,
because as far as I remember when I worked for this one supervisor, she we were really shorthanded, so she would keep asking me to come in for security, right? And there were certain weeks where I would be working like 70-something hours in a freaking week, so it's a lot, right? Yeah. However, when it came time that, hey, I need to do this because, for example, I was traveling to Colorado at the time. I was traveling out to be part of a police department there before. It didn't work out. Life happens, right? But she let me go for 4 or 5 days, even when they were shorthanded, Why? Because I've been working so hard, right? I mean, I worked all that overtime. It's like, so she repaid the favor. She's like, I want you to succeed too, so I'm going to repay you back. It's like, I'm going to make it work. Like, if I have to work the overtime, which she did, she's like, I'll work the overtime for you because you did it for me. And like that amount, like, I can't tell you how much respect I had for that. That right there is not something a lot of supervisors will do.
Yeah, it's not common. That's the thing that you actually is the weirdest thing to me. It's almost like, bad, mediocre, and good are pretty much the standards for supervisors. It's very rare to even say that someone's in the middle. And we commonly work in environments where they're mediocre or bad. So when we see somebody that's good, we're like, wow, this is not normal.
Yeah.
But say it almost gets to the point where you don't even trust the good nature of that person due to the rarity of it. And I'm experiencing this currently right now. I have one of the best,
right? Like you're on your toes, right?
I'm on my toes. I'm just waiting for.
Where's the fucking? When's the shoe gonna drop? Right?
Exactly. I'm waiting for that moment when he turns tail and he's like, oh well, it's my way or the highway. But one thing is a good sign is that when the person doesn't have experience within your field or your company or whatever they've been brought to, and they serve a supervisor role above you. You gotta keep your eyes on them, because generally those people are only quiet because they're ignorant. But whenever they learn certain things and they start to develop patterns inside of the company and learn processes, usually that's when they're like, okay, now I have the ability to flex my power because I know how the job works. So, and if you catch somebody who's already experienced within your company, even if you have never met them before, likelihood is if they're showing these good behaviors, it's because it's going to be something that's natural to them. So, but yeah, it's just a sad thing in reality, just how because if I count down how many people I've worked for, I can say that most of them, not that I dislike them, but a good majority of them were in the leadership position primarily due to experience.
Yeah. And
that's a factor, but it's not really the only thing. Like, leadership has elements that are already like established within a person. Not everyone can be a leader. Like, contrary to belief, a lot of people are like, I have everything they need to do that. I'm like, yeah, for sure. You know the job well. You probably can go to that position and do every task involved. But when it comes to the elements of actually giving people the ability to drive while they're doing something, because half the time most people are working in jobs that they don't plan to be their careers. So you have to find a way to actually make those people enjoy it and to have some sense of connection. And maybe they do decide to make it their career just simply because of your inspiration within them. Maybe they don't know what path they're going, and that's where they are, and you opened up the door. But yeah, it's just more commonly that you have the people that aren't. They don't really have that element, and that part is ridiculously sad. So
experience, like, it's good. Experience is good, but there's merit that goes along with that. There's that element of human relations, right? That you need to have down, right, to be able to inspire people. Because just being a leader is more than just barking out instructions and putting out a schedule. It's more than that. You got to make sure that people are going to do the work well. That they're not going to half-ass shit. That's also part of it. But how do you make them do that if they don't want to be there, but they're not doing anything so bad as to like get fired, right? You gotta inspire them to do the right thing, and that only comes with if they like you and you're able to really pull that out of people. Because some people, like I said, some people just go for the paycheck. Like and that's the truth. A lot of us just do. We gotta fucking keep the lights on, right?
Yeah.
So
honestly, just looking for the next thing better. That's usually what ends up happening to everybody. And they keep you see people that are just working a job, and then they wonder like why they're leaving. Like, well, they didn't get paid enough. And it was like, well, did they like what they were doing? I'm like, because that may have changed things. Because a lot of times people are like, well, I'll stick it around if I'm connected to this company, if I'm connected to the people that I trust, that because of what I put in, that I get something out and I go up the ladder. That usually is how a good supervisor works. And then all the people that were making that company a certain way, the head explains the rest.
Yeah.
So, because eventually a bad supervisor will have bad workers. So, because when that whole saying is like, the leader it's the person that they blame generally when something happens, and you're like, well, that person could be just a horrible person, this, that, and other. And it's like when you look at a large group and a good majority of workers are lazy, or they don't want to do anything, or they're always having an attitude, a lot of that behavior is forged by how that supervisor is acting. For plenty of reasons, obviously, even if it's like just either that it's allowed or that rolling back up towards the supervisor happens due to their behavior or attitude. And you have people that are walking out and whatnot. So it's a common thing. It's a super common thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and like one thing that really got me like really messed up with one of the bad supervisors I had is just like it was this is one thing as a supervisor I'm gonna advise, when I was one to people. It's like never fuck with people's vacation. Never fuck with somebody's vacation. Don't threaten them about I'll make you have to work during your vacation, or don't put them in a state of panic or flight of like I don't know. You can put in the request, but honestly, when it comes time, like it might not be able to happen. Like no. You are majorly screwing up right there. You are really gonna, if the person liked you, that respect gone. You can't do that. It's like people like for their mental health. There's many reasons, but just for their mental health, like people need breaks. They can't just fucking work year round with no breaks. Like we are more than just working at a job. Like a huge portion of our life, 40 hours in a week is already ridiculous. I think it should be 32. And to be honest, it should be 4 days of resting, 3 days of work. But beyond that, I'm just saying, like, people need to experience time with their families. They need to live life. That's why they're working, is to get money so they can live life. They're not working just to work till they go to the grave.
Yeah.
So, like, and that's what I really dislike about that one bad supervisor. It's like, it was a fight. Like, I would give 2 months of notice. Like, hey, I'm just gonna need it like 3 days for this, and they didn't put the request in. 2 weeks out, he's like, well, I'm gonna need you to work a little bit extra hours so I can give you those 3 days. I'm like, dude, you've had 2 fucking months to prepare for this. How are you not prepared for this? Like, and then having that like sense of like threats too, because he had told me, he was like, well, if you had refused to work those extra hours, then I would have just said like, yeah, you can't go on your vacation. It's like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're like a child, dude. Like,
and that's another thing. Because you catch that in the case. He had a problem with his scheduling. He had a problem with getting employees to stay a certain time. Something he was truly responsible for, regardless of you going on vacation or not. So what ends up happening is that because he made a mistake, you catch this with bad supervisors always. They'll find a way to make other people accountable that they find more reliable to fix it. And that's super common thing. They'll have that person, they're like, well, we'll get this person to work, or we'll have them do this position because they're the best at it, even though they've been doing it for fucking forever and they're tired of doing it and it burns them out and they have to do overtime each time to do it. Whatever it is that thing is, a lot of times you'll catch that a bad supervisor will not fix this mistake or own up for it. When instead he'll do this, he'll play that card where he's like, well, in this company, you're supposed to work this many hours for that. It's just in security we work a lot of hours, so you're not gonna get your vacation until you put in that time. We don't really refuse overtime or anything like that. Which in reality, what he's saying is that I fucked up. I'm scheduling. I ran off a couple employees, and I don't have enough people to work. Sorry, can you help me out? But see that, he doesn't even have
the delivery sucks. It's like the delivery. Oh, and here's the thing. He was just bad at schedule because I took over from this guy.
Exactly.
And my schedule was perfectly fine. Like, I would let people go on vacation. I would work it. Why? Because I only had to use a couple extra brain cells to fucking make it work. And a little extra effort. So it's not even that the scheduling was so hard. It wasn't. I freaking did it quickly. Within 10 minutes, I could fucking make a weekly schedule and make it work.
Exactly. And you can see how that is stacked on. This guy comes in, he can't handle the position well. He's already making mistakes at the core job, right? So this is the epitome of a bad supervisor because he can't even do the number thing right. Like the thing that a lot of them at least can do, that. So he can't get that right. And then when he makes a mistake, he uses the managerial role in the sense of power to try to correct it, not explaining the reality that he is the reason why it's gone wrong.
Right. And then using those threats. Like, it's like trying to puff your chest out. It's like you're only going to get people to hate your ass if you do that.
Yeah.
Like, you're really not doing yourself any favor. Because when that was happening, I was like, anytime, like, he kind of asked me, like, well, can you do this? I just never answered my phone. I never answered my phone. I didn't pick up for him. I didn't answer text. I didn't open up text. It's like, no, dude, screw you. You're going to threaten me and act like that? Like, I'm not going to do you any favors.
The reliability that you see in someone quickly dies when you act like that. That's the thing about it. You never want to do anything for that person. So, yeah, you can see that guy, he already had the layers for that. Same thing with the person that I'm talking about. She came into the company and she eventually shows that she doesn't want to let anybody to give any opinion on anything. And the thing about it is, in my particular situation that makes it ridiculous, is that I also was serving a supervisor role. She was just above me. So this is a company in which it's a large scale business. We're doing vending, and this is distribution. Opinions from different sectors count. It's not like I'm telling the person what to do. I'm just saying methods are like, well, maybe we should do this. And the fact that conversations like that quickly turned into arguments based off of the fact that she had to be, because the hierarchy, she was above. The simple fact that I said something right almost looked like it was a problem. So that's the thing about that. But that kind of goes into another element. Something else that I think should be broached is between she and I, there was a 25 year age gap. And a lot of times you get treated differently. Even if you're in that role, you get treated differently by the employees if they're older than you a lot of times, especially if they're very aware of that, depending on the position or like the company per se. Because I did management, like first job ever was at McDonald's. I worked there through almost all of my high school life, and I became a manager when I was 19. And I did that for like a year, and I left. And when I was doing that, there were employees that, guys that were having hard times, and they came in to work because it was easy to get hired at McDonald's, and they were older men, 30s sometimes. And a lot of them, when they figured out how old I was, started to alter the way that they treated me. So that's something that you commonly will see. So that's something I believe happened in this situation with me and this manager as well. But if you are in a situation like that, obviously, with an employee, that work environment, your age doesn't matter. Don't even make it relevant. Don't speak about it. I don't think it's something that people need to know. If they ask you about it, then sure, but don't even decide to make conversation about it, because it almost makes you like you're ballooning yourself to people, and then it makes them act out on you. So, because in my case, we're talking about an employee that was a good employee. A guy that never had problems with me until he, his pride or ego or whatever was challenged by the simple fact that a younger man was telling him what to do. I can say thoroughly that I'm not the kind of person that, tells people to do anything in any correct way. I ask before I tell someone something, So it wasn't my method. And my method always worked. It was the moment that my age was broached that happened. And this is an employee that had to be suspended because of him acting out. I had to be sent home and suspended because of his behavior. Not something that I even wanted to do. Not even a disciplinary action that I ever had to carry out when I was doing that at that age. So when you're young, you're going across this kind of thing. It's definitely kudos to you for getting the position, first of all, obviously. It is a great thing to achieve things like that early, because then where you end up at in the company is way further than a lot of people. You know what I mean? But you have to be wary of the simple fact that your age, it is an element. It is something that people study. You have to spend time making sure that you're not being read for that. Present yourself in a professional manner. Don't even bring attention to it if you know that you work in an environment where that's something that could be questioned on you. So,
which you had worked side by side with this guy, right, for a while?
Yeah, this guy was he had been there for about 6 months, and then he figured out how old I was, and he changed. That's how he knew how old I was the day before, and I'm almost certain within 2 days I had worked with him again, and I was telling him things that I normally would do, but hearing the corrective nature that sometimes as a supervisor you have to say things like, no, we have to do it like this, or no, that's not how the process is handled, and you get a little direct. It's nothing rude. It's just that's how you handle the position. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when it's happening, in his case, is that he's like, 19-year-old is telling me something, and that alteration happened just like that. It did not take any time. So, God. And I'm not saying that everyone who's older acts that severe. It's just the simple fact that you don't know, don't even open the door. That's what I say is a better advice, because I was young, I was 19 at that time, and I'm 24 now. So the time that I've done that in supervisor roles, which I'm currently doing now, I realize now I'm that's not an important thing. Where I work, they commonly don't know how old I am. and they can't even keep up with my age. They're often asking me, "How old are you now?" Like they don't really know, because it's just it doesn't count. So.
Yeah, it doesn't. I didn't have too many problems with that, but I think a reason for that is because I had worked as a common security guard with that same crew, and they respected me because I would do a lot of that overtime stuff, and I would look out for them even before. Because when we had the bad supervisor, it's almost kind of it's almost how I was like kind of like a pseudo supervisor, because certain times like I would try to talk to that bad supervisor about this or this on behalf of people, or I would just try to do extra things that would help us all out in the long run. So they knew I was younger than a lot of them. Like some of them, one or two were younger, but a lot of them were older than me. But when I became a supervisor, they didn't really flip too much. But I think it's just I won that respect from them. But I could definitely see how that's a problem, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the sense of like, you know, considering where you were working at, the turnover rate wasn't nearly as ridiculous as it is at a McDonald's. So like the common nature of me having to meet an employee, get used to them, get used to my management style after they've been with a bunch of managers that all work there, and then you know. I couldn't, you know, sort of put that TLC on each in person in the same way as, you know, that could happen if you work as colleagues with someone else. And that guy, he met me as the manager.
That's what changes it. Like, you know, that does have a lot to do with it.
Because he had enough time to see my nature as an employee. A lot of times it does alter how people think of you in that situation. So there's a lot of factors definitely at play when how that goes. So it's not every time there's an older guy, he's going to treat you badly because you're younger. Like it's not literally that.
Right. But it does happen.
But it does happen. Yeah. So it's something that has to be, you have to think about it when you're in an environment like that. But a lot of that has to do with what specifically is your work field as well. Sometimes it really doesn't matter because the age range is ridiculously wide. So it doesn't matter what part you look at it, whether it's management or the crew. It's still, if it has a wide age range of people, you're not going to really see that anyways. But McDonald's, it's high schoolers. So no matter how many people were working there, likelihood is at 19, me just having graduated, I was going to be older than most of them. Yeah. Even though I got that role as soon as you could feasibly get it within the company, because that's the youngest you could achieve it, you're still going to be older than most people. So they have the random guys that were 30, 40 sometimes that they stood out as is, but they weren't going to really have a problem with that if they knew their management was older, which we did have a lot of older management. I just happened to be an outlier in that. So, yeah, that's it's just something to be wary of. So,
good supervisors. I guess we should talk. Well, we kind of touched on this because when we talk about the bad, we're like, what you should.
Or the counter side, because you got to be able to see in between them. So that's the biggest thing about that. Which in reality, the biggest thing with that is, you know, like I said earlier, you have some of them that come in and they look good from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So when you're naive to how these processes go, a lot of times you're just going to get yourself hurt in your job and you're going to start hating and all that stuff, right? But after enough time doing it, there's signs. And that has a lot to do with how you're just reading your work environment, how you read the people that are around you. And that's something that's important to see when it comes to people that work above you, as well as you in a supervisor role have to do with the employees to achieve that being a good supervisor thing. Because we're saying the difference between the two primarily is how they connect themselves in the social nature with the employees around them. But they have to know how to read into the employees around them. And even if it's not that they can just see things, they know exactly how to dig for it. So I would say the most important thing with that is that if you're in a supervisor role, it's quite simple, but just talk to people. I mean, like, it seems like some people think it's like a force of will, like some supernatural thing whenever it comes to that. But a lot of times the information you need is right on the table. You just got to get people to open their mouths. And a lot of times you can see the little instabilities that might be with certain things, you know. Like, let's say, for example, right now, in my current job, I have an employee and there's some, I'm not going to get into detail with it, but there's some at-home issues taking place, right? It makes it difficult to be on work at time and things like that. So in this particular situation, it's easier to connect with that person by just talking about it. A lot of times it's like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, we'll let them have the time off. That's a piece of the formula, but she didn't smile at work until I actually asked her about the issue and was able to make her laugh and things like that. So, yeah, you have to be very in tune with your environment. And even if you're not talking, just sit back and watch everybody function. It'll tell you a lot of things. So I imagine you could see that and just seeing, you had some lazy people. I know you were telling me about people that didn't try at all. And you knew exactly what it was that was going to push them into gear. So
yeah, and a lot of that's like the way I did it. There's multiple styles you can do this, but like I said, and I kind of followed through with that good supervisor I mentioned, the one that would repay the favors over time. So she would spend extra time talking to us, even when we just got off shift, or she just got off shift at like, let's say she worked 8 to 4 and I came in at 4 to midnight. Well, she would stay an extra 10 minutes and she would talk to me about stuff, the state of affairs at the site. How are you doing? Like issues. I'm working on this one. Running things by me, getting my opinion on things. Like
exactly.
And so I did that. I would stay after my shift, and I would shoot the shit with some of the my employees, and I would just joke around. Because if you establish that bond, that relationship, it's really easy. I mean, if you're likable, people want to do favors for you. They like you. So that's the style I used. Is I would take extra time. I did the people stuff, to make sure that obviously you can't get everybody to love you, right? But I mean, you can get a lot of people to like you. I mean, it's not very, very hard to do it.
Yeah. Some people are just naturally wary of any supervisor in a position, but in a general sense, it's always felt good when someone had decided to take the time to talk to me. And that's currently why I'm very fond of the person that I'm working for now, just simply because of the general connection. Obviously, you don't have to overkill. Some things are very personal. You have to be digging in people's personal lives. Sometimes some people are okay with it, some people are not. But one thing you always can do is, like you said, see their opinion, have simple conversations, and just be like, what are you doing after work? How do you spend your off days? Simple things like that. Oh, he wants to know about me. He or she wants to know about me. And that, a lot of times, invites people, and you can get the quietest of people, recluses, to do that. Or little things like, hey, guys, I wanted to get you guys lunch for today. That's something that I know supervisors do sometimes. Obviously, if they have the expense to do it. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to go broke buying people lunch. But in reality, that social connection is one thing that matters a lot. But another thing is that get used to seeing your employees in different behaviors. They say work and home are supposed to be separate. It's kind of a lie. Your brain's with you no matter what spot you're in. So when you go to work, sometimes that whatever has happened, it comes with you. And to understand the patterns that your employees have, you get the chance to catch the rifts in them just based off of behavioral changes like that. And if you've already established that line of connection, a person that may have been a lot more introverted would be willing to at least explain somewhat about the fact that they're just going through some things, and you might be able to alter how that person's working in that environment. I've had people that came into work and had that going on. I sat there and gave them like a 10, 15 minutes, nothing that kills our workflow and time, and let them get it out. Some people, they actually need to cry after something that's serious. I've seen that whenever I was at the restaurant more. You had younger kids going through things at home. It's harder for them to try to get away from those major problems. But when they're older like that, sometimes they're not gonna spill that much out. But they have enough space just to know, hey, someone thought about me today.
Yeah. And
you can get the moments and try to encourage them and open the door to the fact, because a lot of people, they'll try to do that thing like it's like, well, we all have problems, but you're at work now. Let's do it. Let's do it. And they'll get real stupid with it. And it's like, that's the real champion's little behavior or whatever. But in reality, that's a lie. That it doesn't work for people like that. And some people can't just shove it down. So if you get the time just to open that doorway,
right,
you might do a lot of justice.
And think about it, that situation right there. All right, if I was going through something really serious and I heard that from my supervisor, I would do it. I mean, I would do what he's asking, push it down, whatever, go to work. But I'd just be like, damn, this freaking sucks. Like, I still have this on my mind. Whereas if that supervisor had been like, hey, what's up? And then he spends 5 minutes or me explaining, and then he sympathizes, and he's like, and he makes me feel better. You know what happens after that experience? I feel loyalty towards the supervisor. So then I'm going to do the job even better because I'm like, I can't let this guy down. He helped me.
And that's the difference between saying, push through and let's get it done. You're kind of just rushing at that point. You just want to get the day over with because it's lingering in your mind. You'd rather just be in bed, But if you have that guy that does it in that way, you consider the quality of what you're doing as well. The importance of it a lot more because that person is able to at least give you a little bit of fresh air, a little green grass in that moment. And you're going to consider what it is that you're doing. And a lot of times, work is a sense of escape if your home life is giving you a problem.
Yeah.
That is a thing that happens. When I was younger, I had issues at home, and often when I came to McDonald's, even I was a little bit reclusive, if they had a little sense of being able to open the door for that conversation, a lot of times I could find, peace at work. Just talking to people, having fun, waiting for the slow moments where we would have conversation and just, throw jabs and jokes at each other and whatnot. And whenever that happens, a lot of times you're like, not really thinking about it. It makes your workday better. Though you have to come back to that situation, you're not up here, like all the way up here with the anger. You're starting from the beginning again. So that's a very critical thing, for sure.
Yeah. And then, this kind of goes into what we do, right? Which is another part of this. But one thing that I do, body language, a lot of that stuff has a lot to do with it when you're correcting people. So what I've done, and I don't know why this works, but it does. If you're correcting somebody, you're talking to somebody about improvement or anything like that, where you have to give criticism. I don't face the person actually head on and I'm just like, blah, blah, blah. I actually, funnily enough, I do it pretty naturally. It's like I kind of walk and then I move to stand beside him like this. Yeah. And then I'd start talking about this, and then it's like the effect that has is, hey, it's like we're equals. It's like we're equals. I'm your friend. I'm here to help you type of thing. Like, it sounds stupid, but I promise it works. It
is something that changes in their heads for sure. Plus, most people who are going to do that, it's a very hands-on way. Because generally, if somebody comes beside you, they need you to see what it is that they're talking about, as well as the fact that it's like, hey, you don't get the opportunity to get intense with eye contact or any facial expression. You're right there, and it's just your hands, and that's something that usually does the job. And a lot of times, this is usually, like I was saying earlier, ask people before you tell them something until it gets too. And obviously, when it's you've done it more than once, then you're gonna have to tell them. The second thing is try to understand what's making it difficult, because a lot of times, the worst thing you can do in that position is just assume. So a lot of times, even if I knew what I was, I'm like, this person might just be lazy. In my head, this is what I'm thinking, right? So if I ask them about something and it's been a problem for a while, generally what I did is that, hey, I really need you to do this, that, and other. Is there anything about this that's making this difficult? Is there something you don't understand about it? Do I need to show you again the process that way? And maybe it's something that I missed in details in explaining. And a lot of times, what you may have assumed, sometimes is not the case. Despite how well you've been around those employees and seen their behaviors, how long that's been, you might not always be right. So don't just think because I am the supervisor, I know exactly everything. You're supposed to know a lot of stuff, but in the communicative door, you have to give your employees a reason to tell you, a reason, or give them the opportunity to give a reason. About what's going on, and generally a lot of times you're like, oh, well, now I know what it is. Sometimes you realize that person's just not fit for that position, and you're like, well, I didn't even think about that. Just thinking that, oh, I taught them. Here they are. Here we go. This is how I do that. Like, this is not gonna.
Yeah. One thing I would suggest is I probably need to reread this so I'm more, I can kind of again, when you reread things it sticks in your head even better. But there's a book actually called I think it was How to Make Friends or Make People Like You by Dale Carnegie. I read that book. It's pretty good. I recommend that. It's along those lines, but it's about Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
And one of the things the whole thing about getting people to like you, one of the easy ways to do it is one thing that flatters people a lot is attention. And I'm not talking about fake ass attention, like fake interest, because people can see right through that. I'm talking about genuine interest in a person, like, hey, like you ask a question about them or something that maybe they're passionate about or something that's just interesting about them. And people will like you because you're taking the time to learn about them, and so they get eager to talk to you. And so that's a really simple way to get people to like you is asking questions like that.
Yeah.
Really simple technique.
Yeah, for sure. A likable manager is going to be always more effective in talking to people. You see, it keeps rerouting to that. If you just sit there, you just go, right? Being likable and being able to talk. Like, if you can't achieve anything with those two things, you're not going to be as successful, despite how well you know how to do the job.
Right.
So that's the thing that matters, because no matter what, your work is done by the people below you, but you are the face of it. So if you think about that formula, you have to make sure that everyone feels the way you feel. One thing that I often did in my work environments, I did this a lot at McDonald's as well, but I would be really peppy, which is not a normal thing for me. Most people who know me, I'm not like a very up hype kind of guy. I can be pretty reserved. I like to talk, I'm very talkative, but I don't have that kind of energy. But whenever I walked into the work environment, I would automatically realize, I'm like, as the supervisor, and you'll catch this a lot, if a supervisor is angry, the entire staff is just quiet. And that's it's very unhealthy. So what I did as an alternative is that I came in already energetic. Wasn't overkill, wasn't trying to be annoying, just already had it, just trying to basically give that space of inspiration, I guess, to do the job. Nothing too unrealistic, obviously. You know what I mean? Whenever you're seeing that there's actually a problem or deficit, you got to focus on that. Don't just be like, oh, yeah, we'll do, you can get through anything. It's not like that loose. But I like to cut up with people. I got used to being able to joke with people and have people joke with me. And a lot of times you found that your environment was functioning right without losing sight of your task. Because people still have to know the balance that you can't just do too much and then they take advantage of you. Because that also becomes an issue in that. And that's something when I was younger, I didn't realize. It was like, you're overkilling on this. But you do control your environment. So your general mood and behavior often alters things. So if you're seeing people, they're not being too talkative, and it's kind of the work environment with that that conversation or collaboration in any sort of way, it's better suited. Just start talking to people. Kind of just chain things together. Just have a conversation with someone and ask the other guy his opinion, and he's just kind of drawn into the circle. And a lot of times you're getting people to connect in the workplace. Doesn't mean they have to be best friends, but a good coworker is still a good thing. And for them to like each other, has a lot to do with how you're integrating your environment. And that all starts with your behavior and your attitude as soon as you come in. So. And,
this is also another piece of advice, but I will say it's like double-edged, because I joked about this with John Quez before. So if there's something I would say keep this limited, okay? Keep this limited, but here's the technique. If you have to give something out, like bad news to all your employees on something you need to do policy-wise that sucks and it's a huge drag, a lot of the times I would just be like, I would empathize with them and be like, this really sucks, blah, blah, and then I would just be like, but corporate did it, so then I turned corporate into an enemy, and I'd be on the same side as them, and be like, it's like, we have no choice, guys, I know they suck ass, and then I'd get on their level, we're all in this together, and but you need to use it sparingly,
It works to an extent, for sure. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, they say sparingly, I do it a lot. I'm sorry,
I try to use it sparingly, but I would do it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily because I'm trying to diminish the company. The company in reality has its reasons for doing something. But I'm, as the face of management, what I'm not going to do is represent something as if it's my idea. It's just me personally.
Right.
So So what I'm going to say is that I'm going to tell them the strengths and weaknesses of the plan. And if the weaknesses suck ass, I'm going to tell them, hey man, I get it. It's bullshit. But outside of that, But at the end of the day, everything like that is from up there. You just can't be that ridiculous advocator for every element that the company presents. Because right now, my current supervisor, he's really good at and you get certain situations if I'm being totally honest, I don't understand this either. It's just the kind of thing. You don't even have to give in to the point of saying it's terrible. You know what I mean? But there is those moments where you can at least say there's some discrepancies with this policy or method or whatever that is, because oftentimes there's no perfect company, and a lot of times they're changing things because of certain situations, and it didn't suit everybody. So yeah. I was wondering what you were gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I would take an extra mile though. As in, if it did genuinely suck, I would just be like, I am gonna address this, guys. I'm gonna talk about this with them, and then and I would show them that I did do that. So then they'll be like, okay, well, it sucks, but at least he's standing up for us. So
yeah, that's the one thing you'll catch a lot with people, because what ends up happening when you present the policy in that way is that they get that you understand them, and generally that manager who's already functioned like that has already built kind of the clout, we're gonna say, but loyalty with his employees. So what ends up happening is that regardless of how bad it is, their loyalty as a whole still has them serve the company, the corporate system well in their position. And they still will reap rewards from it because of the system you've already created, you know? But if you're that kind of person, because you catch this a lot, when they already hate who they work for, and you're like, okay, you got to do this now. You're like, no, I'm not. That's what ends up happening.
Right.
And then it's two options. Either the person just starts doing the job poorly or they quit. I saw this, I'm not going to say this person's name, but you know what person I'm talking about. So, we had a safety procedure at our job, right? One that, if I'm being honest, it just didn't seem as sensible, because it was something that was, it only worked for people who were extremely short, right? And the guys that we had working were not. So in reality, none of our employees really needed this process, right? But this person came in threatening the idea of doing this, and that write-ups would be handed out, right? And this person, because already with this dislike, even with the consequence on the table, openly and directly while the guy was in the building, defied his command or whatever. Just straight up, he was like, hey, use this device to do this. And he was like, no. And goes on to continue work. In reality, that guy had no real sensible reason to fire him, so he didn't do it. But you get the sense of like, whoa, what power did he have in that? By trying to have power, by trying to be intense and be strong with it. That was like, that didn't do him any justice. So letting that go to your head and just stepping on everyone's toes as you get in the way, what you start to realize is that a lot of people, they just don't listen to you anymore. They just don't. You can fire them all you want, but I tell you this, any supervisor knows having turnovers while you're in command, it makes you eventually a turnover. So,
it makes you look bad, because what's the common denominator after all this shit?
Yeah, you're the only person. So they see all these people are leaving. Next thing you know, you're gone too. So you gotta create that system for sure. And it has to stay consistent like that. The true balance of understanding when consequence has to be handed in direct order process of like delivery of, company policies or rules or anything like that. And if you're trying to enforce these things, how you have to do it generally, it can't be just do this because I said so, or I believe everything that the company does is right, or this, that, and other. You're supposed to obviously uphold elements to your company and agree with systems. You are at times supposed to be direct with reprimanding, but if these are just the general sense of operation that you have, and you don't connect with them, they don't know, you don't know about their life, they don't know anything about you in any sense of a personal way, you don't show any other element other than basically just the suit, the position, the name tag, whatever it is that denotes that for you, they're not being treated like a person. And at the end of the day, as I like to say, when we all go home, we all piss and shit. We all have to drive to get to that place. We all live like regular people. We have to eat to survive, etc. So to act any differently doesn't mean that. What you got that position for is because you supposedly are supposed to be capable of getting people to do correct work with good quality while having them actually enjoy their job. That's usually what the system is. Not that they're just working there not to do it. Your aim is to try to actually have them have some sense of connection to that work. And even if it's like, I don't like what I do, but if they can get the sense of satisfaction of just, even if it's just like if it's like distribution, what I'm saying, and it's just having something nice and orderly, and they feel good off of that, generally that feeling comes from the fact that they know that they did good by you because you've done good by them. And usually the opposite happens to a bad supervisor, where it's like, I don't care what happened. I fucking hope he sees this shit. He's going to be mad. That's what happens a lot with employees. And we all have had that place where we just rather would do something terribly just simply because of who asked us. And we're obviously not going to do that because a lot of times we're afraid of our jobs and all that stuff. But you don't want to be that guy that's in that upper position. And that's what his employees are. And it's because of you. You're getting right here what we're doing. Obviously, at a young age, we have things that we're going to understand even more so about this as we go along. But we're trying to offer a bit of something that a lot of people just don't have. From looking at it from the standpoint of being an employee and a supervisor at different time periods. And in my particular case, I often see the people that are above me, so being in the middle of that chain. You know, there's things that are very critical to making that system work. Even if there's things going wrong with the company, even if there's issues, even if there's pay problems, you find ways to keep people around simply because of being a good person, reading your environment, and being able to communicate. So, you have anything else? I think that's it.
That's pretty much it, unless we want to go into the reading people, which we can.
Reading people. So, well, as a general tip, because I was talking about that. So we keep saying read people.
Yeah, we touched on it a couple of times.
But as a more direct thing we're talking about, you're not going to be able to do this in a supervisor role if you can't just do this in your life. This is
right, but you can develop this skill. The easiest way is, it's just anything. Like, honestly, like, even if you watch a TV show or a movie, right, and you see the emotion somebody have or the motivations, and you match that up with facial features, match that up with body language, mannerisms, and then but not only that, obviously, pay attention to real people in real life, just extra close attention on, hey, what do they do when they're angry? What do they do when they are about to lie? Like, you notice patterns with people. Not everybody acts the same, but we all have patterns we follow, right? Things you can pick up on. And that will let you know how people are responding to what you're saying. Like, if you're saying something and they don't like it, you can try to alter this to try to win them over. But see, then that goes into timing. But all that that I'm talking about is encapsulated in a term I like to call social maneuvering, okay? So, in order to socially maneuver well, you need to be able to read a person, read how they're receiving what you're saying. Delivery has a lot to do with it too, but just pay attention to body language, to facial expressions, to how they say it, tone of voice. The word choice too has a lot. There's a lot that goes into it, but I'm saying my best advice is pay extra attention to people, and you're going to start noticing these patterns. You're going to start noticing. You're going to be able to see through people too, like a lot of their BS.
Yeah,
there's also that.
After a while,
like, not to change the topic too much, but like something me and John Quez, and he's been reading. He's better at reading people than I am, but over the years, after him like kind of pointing things out and show it, I've gotten pretty good at it too. Yeah. But one thing we could both talk about that's pretty easy is when there's racist people, for example, I can see right through it. And you can be a really, really good actor, but I can see right through you. And the way I can see right through you is your facial expression, even the little crinkles in your face on when you see me, your slight change of voice, your body language, the look in your eyes. You can't hide that. There's little things that are always there, and I can pick up on that. John Quest can do the same thing. That's obviously with racism, but you can do the same thing with many other topics, many other feelings and emotions. If you memorize those patterns. Yeah.
And a lot of times, one of the things that throws a lot of people off is sometimes the pattern is unique to the person, but it's still a pattern. Like, we had one guy, it was weird. You would think that he was putting his all into his work, but you realize his speed was derived from anger. And when he often did, and I could tell this, I could walk in, I'm like, he's briskly going, and everyone else they're just quiet. And I was like, okay, so this guy's upset. He upsets someone else, and no one likes how this is feeling in the environment, so they're just trying to get done, right? So when I come in, employee comes up to me, tells me the situation that happens. The guy sees that I'm being spoke to about it, tries to come and defend himself, and he's already being angry from the start. It became quite clear then. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the issue. So Yeah, you have to be able to see all those elements. Like he was saying, racism is it's a good example for sure. It's just one of those things that, like, especially if I'm a black guy, he's Mexican. We're gonna have situations where we might see somebody that represents some form of prejudice, and it's not out loud. A lot of things with people, when there's some sense of discrepancy with a person, it's not like that. I mean, it's even when you're just around people in an environment and you're not liked for any reason. There's different ways that you can figure that out.
Yeah.
So, and it's just, you just have to pay attention to it. Just the word choice. You can have it like for example, you could tell when somebody even just thinks that you're not that intelligent simply by how much they explain something to you. And some people are like, well, they could do that to everybody. I'm like, that's the thing. Watch them with other people. I was like, that's it. That's as simple as that. And then eventually you're like, okay, I can see that this changes in the moment he comes to me. So same thing counts for the dating environment as well, which, you're going to assume that every woman, for our case, is going to be different, but they're going to still have a pattern. Same thing with that guy. So what you're going to notice is that they are generally going to have something that they do with the guys they like specifically, and then something they do with everybody they don't, or the people they just could care less about. So the pattern always repeats. So it didn't matter what situation, it's just you can't stop it. Everybody lies in the same way for themselves. Some people, they rear their head back when they do it. Some people blink a lot. People fiddle with things when they lie. But no matter what, when that person lies, they will not stop themselves from being able to do that exact same thing. Some people, some guys are really stone cold liars. They're really good at it. Actually, sometimes what you'll catch is that those people are much more clear and direct when they lie than when they talk normally. Because it's a rehearsed thing. You have to think about a lie before you do it. So it's it's not like regular talking. You know directly, I am about to say information that is not the truth. I was like, it's not what I believe, and it's not, and I know this didn't happen. So you have to tell yourself, you have to script. Well, this, and the other. And it's like, he said it so directly. I'm like, he probably lied. Sometimes that's the case.
Which don't lie. Bad thing to do. Unless it's a white lie, then those are kind of acceptable, right? Does this dress make me look fat? I mean, that's a taking time. Yeah. But if you have to lie, I mean, think about this. Why do people say, "Oh, if you're going to lie, the best way to lie is to sprinkle bits of the truth in"? Why? Because then you merge those patterns together. You merge those patterns when you're talking about the truth, and you're lying. Different patterns, but you merge them together, makes it look convincing. And
it's part of social maneuvering, because when you're in certain situations, especially in a police situation, I mean, even if we want to go back to agreeing with the corporate side, right? What you're doing is fusing two ideologies, one you don't agree with and one you 100% agree with, and you have to stand in the middle of it for people to function with you.
And to look convincing, you do this. You merge it together, right? And this becomes a lie. However, your body language, your tone of voice, all that seems sincere.
Yeah,
well, and it is, because you can be sincere. I mean, but also not completely 100% on the side of employees, right? But
you're trying to provide something,
right?
Because if you do only one of those things, I mean, the immediate thing is that you're going to run people away. What ends up happening is that you have to work people up to that information. Some people would like to disagree with that because it's like, if they can't accept it, then they're gone. I'm like, well, good luck. You're going to run away everyone, because that generally you're going to keep. There's gonna be less people that stay than the ones that stay around with that mentality. You might have some people like, "Ooh, these are the best guys." But there ain't gonna be a lot of them, and eventually you'll say something that cracks them. Eventually, just simply because you didn't know how to maneuver the environment, especially let's say if an argument escalates, any situation, work, friends, family. If you're in a relationship, you catch yourself in any of those kinds of things. You have to realize, I have to say something that I don't totally agree with. And maybe because you'll learn to agree with that thing at some point. But right now, the most important thing is to end this altercation. Because in social maneuvering, the whole aim is to make sure that you're not the problem and that people can accept you and generally are loyal to you, which is what goes into the work environment thing from earlier. So if you know how to sprinkle Salt Bay, then
altercation is good way to diffuse them. Okay, is, which I don't know what your opinion on this is going to be, so we'll see what you say. But one thing that I've done in the past is, obviously both people tend to like me, so I talk to them separately, and then I empathize with each side. Even if one's dead set wrong, and I'm just like, okay, I understand you, right?
Yeah.
And then when you do that, you meet both their emotional requirements, and they relax.
Yeah.
Right? Even if the other person's dead set wrong, if you at least listen why the fuck they did that, right?
Yeah.
Then that's good.
That does work, though. I personally think it does. Because the thing is in that, I don't even consider that a lie, because what you're doing is that you're understanding causes, not the action that took place. A lot of people just want to say, you did this is wrong. Like, most of the time, what people are wanting is just that you got where it came from. A lot of times that's rooted in that person's past. I mean, we had an argument with friends one time where I had to do that. I had each person separately. And though one I felt was more wrong than the other, they both technically had a place in which this behavior rose up. That you can be like, oh, there's some reason. There's something that I can understand in that. Nothing to excuse, but there's something to understand in that. And that if somebody's broken in that situation, you still console them. You don't spend your time just telling them they're wrong. And then when that emotion is gone away and they can be a little more clear-headed, you open the door where a lot of times after you give them that, they'll start tearing themselves up a little bit. Not like in a bad way, but they start to look at themselves because they gotten past the feeling. You weren't just beating onto them even more to where it got worse. What you did was you consoled them. You trying to understand. You understood at least where it came from, and then after that, the emotion starts to die, and they're like, "Wait a minute, maybe I could have done it like this.
Yeah,
maybe this is opportunity." And that's when you get the door to open. The door is not open for you to explain. Well, yeah, there were better methods technically. This is what I think that could have worked, etc. But doing that straight out the gate, no, terrible social maneuvering skills if you do that. So
yeah. That I'm sure you guys are realizing what all this is just like never underestimate the power of being likable, of being able to get people on your side, of loyalty, fostering that loyalty, because it will take you very far. And we might get some people that are like, oh, you guys are just people pleasers, but there's a big difference between social maneuvering and people pleasing.
People pleasing is you're consistently lying to yourself. Social maneuvering, you understand what your aim is, and it doesn't say consistent. That's the thing about it. A lot of people don't realize there's a progression within social maneuvering. Eventually, you get to the point you need to. It's just about the route you took. You're not going in being evil. Being a people pleaser is just lying to yourself and being, honestly, just a ridiculous optimist about everything. You have to be realistic to be a social maneuverer.
Yeah.
But it means you also know the stakes. You also know what's wrong with people. You know the instabilities, the emotional issues that could come at hand. And you're reading the environment well enough to see, I can't just do this thing and it works. It doesn't matter if it's the truth. It doesn't matter if it's the reality of the situation. What I have to do is present this person. I got to give it to them slowly. And then eventually, a lot of times you're just steering them towards what it is that they need to do anyways. Because when it comes to this, what your whole aim is to try to alter and grow your environment, and that becomes in the people around you. Same thing if you're doing this in the workplace, you're trying to grow your employees. But a lot of times people think growth is changing a person. You're influencing them.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right.
And social maneuvering is influence. You're never forcing any idea, you're never pushing anything, but you're always still turning to a direction. But they're moving themselves. And that's the thing that matters the most.
And here's something I just thought about that's really easy if you guys are still struggling, kind of understand. Think about this. If you had siblings or if you were the oldest or whatever, and like, for example, my brothers, a lot of times my parents, they'd be like, well, like my little brothers, they'd be like, well, I want this, and this, but I don't know how to make it happen. And they're like, can you talk to mom and dad? Well, now, why are they asking me to talk to mom and dad? Because in the way I'm asking, my delivery, I usually get good results, right? Pay attention to that. If you were the person that was being asked to go do that, pay attention to what are you doing that gets good results. Replicate that with other people besides as your parents, right? Or if you're the little brother that's asking their little sister, whatever, right? Little sibling that was asking the older sibling to do this, what did your older sibling do that would get those results? There's certain things I'm sure that you probably don't really think too much into, but what caused that to click? That's a good example, I think.
A lot of that's just reasoning. I mean, you look at it like you go into something, I want this, and that's it. It's like in real life, when it comes to anything, you have to understand that there's needs. The needs of something matter more to people than just the desires. So whenever you're functioning the social maneuvering in anything like that, and in this example right there, more than likely the older sibling is trying to give some good insight. He needs this because this is a positive thing. If you get in this, he'll be more focused on something, and then maybe he won't do this other thing, right?
Right.
And then a lot of times the parents like, oh, you know what? I didn't even consider that. And then, whatever that is. And it can be something as ridiculous as a game console in reality.
Yeah.
And the parents can find it sensible enough to go like, I'm going to buy this because this person's going to, use their free time on this instead of doing this other thing.
Right, like presenting like that. It was like, well, if Alex gets this Xbox and maybe me and him can have more brotherly bonding time. And then also like mom and dad, well, I mean, he won't go to parties, he'll do more of his homework, he'll be more, more manageable. You can keep an eye on him. So it's selling it too. Like, it's just like, as opposed to my brother Alex going to be like, I want an Xbox right now.
Yeah. And the thing is that when it comes to all those things, somebody can look at that and be like, so you went there and you lied to them? Like, no, these are all true facts.
True.
They are. It's just that the difference between the younger brother and the older brother in the situation is one had enough sense to say it. That's it. So when you're looking at these situations, the only thing that matters is to make sure that you balance the needs and the necessities in any of that versus just the desire. I don't like this because blank, so-and-so, like in the argument thing, so-and-so hurt me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, where did this come from? That's like the real thing in this. It's the one true factual element of this. Because usually that element, if you always return back to that, then it gets people to see things differently, despite anything else associated. And things that were once pretty ridiculous kind of seem somewhat sensible. And that's the whole aim of it. Because you're trying to understand people. And understanding people, being understood, is exactly the thing that makes someone feel loyalty. It's the thing that makes them feel liked. It's the thing that makes them like you. So, I think that would be everything.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice that we gave them. Be likable. Don't be a prick.
Yeah. So, main thing in all this is if you're in a work environment and if you are a supervisor, obviously, we want to tie this in a big knot. It's try to understand your environment, be a good communicator, and learn to be likable to make loyalty with people. That's the key element of this, and know that these elements are things you don't just practice at work. If you establish that element of yourself as a supervisor, trust me, these things work well in real life, and you'll see them in everything, like the many examples that we just listed. So just go out there and try some of these things. I'm certain it'll do you some justice. But with that, I think we are done. Shoe slaps. Hopefully that shoe slaps.